my glasses on. There you go. In 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. Her name is Jen Gilchrist. And Jen is a soul alignment success mentor and speaker. She helps to awaken people to their inherent soul gifts and helps them clear soul level blocks so that they can fully show up in all their brilliance. She guides her clients into practical and actionable steps so that they can create thriving, purpose-driven businesses that aligns to their unique soul's purpose. This topic, finding your path and connecting to your soul's purpose, is so huge for me because often I feel it's our experiences that guide us to really what that soul purpose is. And so with that, I want to welcome you, Jen. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share with all of you.
Yes, me too. So I guess, Jen and I were chatting for a few minutes beforehand, and I was like, wait a minute, how old are you? You look young. She looks great. And, often I say it's through our experiences that we get to where we want to be in our life. And some people never get there. It's almost like it's their karma to keep coming back and trying to learn the lessons. So I'm going to ask you, Jen, how did you get to doing what you do now?
I love life now. I'll often say that right now I feel like my life is a spiritual retreat. And what I mean by that is massages, mindset, meditation, Zumba, all of these things I really consider a part of my everyday workday. For about 6 years in a row, I went to celebrate my birthday, swimming with hundreds of wild dolphins in Hawaii, swimming eye to eye with them as this kind of my own spiritual rejuvenation for the year. And I believe that it's this balance of divinity and action that really sustains my life and builds my success. But it definitely was not always this way. By the age of 30, I was on the hamster wheels of society's version of success. I was a single parent by the age of 20, raised my daughter on my own, bought a 3-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood by the time I was 30, built a 6-figure business doing hair and makeup, all of these things through my 20s. And it feels like, on the outside, wow, things are really together. But on the inside, I was overwhelmed trying to wear all the hats, being the soccer mom, managing the house, doing the networking, taking care of the brides. I had built a bridal business specializing in hair and makeup as my first business in my 20s. And it was all of these things that started making me feel really overwhelmed. I felt exhausted, like life was just kind of taking me for a ride. And it was about 12 years ago now that life literally came to a crashing halt. I had had a couple of glasses of wine at my friend's birthday, celebrating her birthday. And the next thing you know, I was on my way home and I ended up flipping my car, rolling it twice, ending up in a ditch. I know. Fortunately, nobody else was involved. And I wasn't physically injured except for a few scratches, but every single window of my car was broken out. And I had to crawl out of the car, out the window. And I just realized this was a major wake-up call. Like I couldn't keep going on in my head this way. I couldn't be so frazzled. I couldn't have wine be my only form of stress relief. But I was really afraid at that point because I didn't know how to do life differently, right? On the outside, it looked great. On the inside, I was just trying to keep it all together. And so I prayed. I didn't know what to do. So I prayed. I said, I just want to be happy and at peace. And in response to that, my dear grandfather came to me in a dream, and he woke up something within me. He woke up this remembrance that there was more to me than just this body, that though I had all these turmoils of things that had to be dealt with in my life, I wasn't actually alone, and that he was there at God, angels, universe, that whole spiritual support that I was raised knowing about, but didn't really have a direct experience with in my life, was really always there for me. And so when I woke up from that dream, I didn't have all the answers figured out, but I had this sense of peace and hope in my heart that I'd never felt before. And I knew somehow, I just knew that everything was going to be okay. And that's really what started my path of awakening. It was like 9 months of reading every self-help book I could get my hands on. My intuition started opening up. I was beginning to hear my grandparents and see angels. Like all of a sudden, this whole spiritual world really became available to me that I had never really recognized previously. And that led me really to where I am today. I had my first psychic reading actually, and she told me I'd be doing what she was doing in 5 years. And I'm like, what? I'm barely hearing my grandparents talk to me. But that sounds interesting. And something she said spoke to me, and she was right. My first iteration of my spiritual business was 2011, called Divine Spark Within. And it didn't really take off, though, for a couple of reasons initially. One being that I was trying to figure out, like, even though I was awakened, I was in the spiritual closet. Like, I was raised very conservative Christian upbringing. And I was like, how am I going to tell my clients, my hair clients, my family and friends about this newly awakened psychic medium, past life angel card reading, healer self now all of a sudden? Like, how am I going to share that, right? I was compartmentalizing into two different worlds. And the second thing was I was petrified of public speaking. I was so shy in high school. My teachers would let me do my oral reports before and after school. And so these two things, these fears, these visibility fears, kept me hidden and small in my business. And it really wasn't until several years later that I went to a client attraction summit, and all of a sudden God has a funny sense of humor. I'm going there and they're talking about I'm like, I'm staking my claim. I'm going to really put all my attention on my purpose work, because I felt this soul's calling inside of me. And next thing you know, they're talking about speaking to attract clients. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I started arguing with my angels. I don't know if you've ever argued with your spirit team, but it doesn't usually work out as well. So I realized that my fear of public speaking was really what was holding me back. And I decided to face my fears head on and take that course and invest $22,000 to learn my biggest fear. And now I get to be here with people like you, sharing my message and my message of awakening, and really supporting others to feel empowered in their gifts and awaken their gifts and really align their lives with more purpose. And so that's really what brings me here today.
So you speak of a few things that I think we can touch on. And one is an event in our life where we kind of go, I can't keep going like this. Often it's an illness. For me in particular, it was an illness and my daughter's illness. And that is usually a springboard to something bigger in our life. And if we don't listen, we can encounter a snowball effect of many of these mishaps that happen to be your fate unless you listen. Does that make sense to you?
100%. Absolutely. I think everyone's got different, signposts in their life that maybe if they look back, they've heard the whisper for a while, but didn't act on until hindsight, when life can come feeling like it comes crashing down. But in hindsight, really, it starts as a whisper. And when we learn to listen to that, we don't have to experience quite such of that tumultuous journey. But the first one for most people is this way, right? Whether it's through health or accident or the loss of a loved one, even. I mean, many different traumatic events can cause these moments of time that give us the opportunity to change things for ourselves, right?
Yeah. And I've met a lot of people who get those whispers and just don't listen. And then those whispers become louder and louder and louder until you're living a life that's really just not fulfilling, and maybe a life that has, unfortunate things such as illness that are part of the life until you leave, right? But then you touched on another thing, and it's the spiritual awakening. So when I was at the Biohacking Congress in June, I actually lectured on this because I'm a big believer that spirituality, and I call it spiritual biohacking, is part of overall wellness. It doesn't have to be a specific religion, but it can be. It doesn't have to be a specific practice. It can be, and some people disagree with this. It can be multiple practices that you adopt that really help to enrich your life. And I think this is the key, is living an enriched life from midlife onward. So how do you help somebody connect to their life's purpose. Because I believe your life's purpose is your soul purpose, like your soul's, not your soul as in your only, but your soul's purpose. So how do you begin? Where do you even start?
I start one little step at a time, right? It's like focusing in. I think meditation is a huge piece of what can start to connect you to the voice of your own soul, what your soul is trying to tell you, really. Because as you mentioned, it starts as a whisper. Our soul, whether it's our own soul or our angels or guides or God, whatever your understanding of your spiritual choice or spiritual experience is, it's quieter than the mind. It's quieter than the busyness that we can be in when we're in our mind or in our emotions, living in the future or in the past, ruminating about things. All of that can be more overpowering, and we will miss the voice of our soul. So having a small practice, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes a day of really just quieting your mind, focusing on your breath, doing what you can to just be present, I think is where the open point comes for you to start to recognize, what does the voice of my soul even sound like? What is it that I actually even desire? A lot of women I've worked with, when I ask them, well, what is it that you desire? They may not even know, because they've spent their life placing everybody else's needs above their own, as a mother or a parent or a partner or whatever it might be. And so, giving yourself that permission and that time and space is really an important step, I think.
I would agree. I think the first thing is to get quiet, however it is. And it's so interesting. I'm glad that you said that, because one of the things that I do regularly, and I always tell people, take off your headphones and go and walk in nature.
Yes.
Like, you're going to get something from that. If you're paying attention and being present to what's around you, you're going to get, and you can encode it the way that you want to encode it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, people will often look, okay, let me look that up. What does it mean if I see this? Or if I, what does this color feather mean? What is this? And I'm trust me, I do that all the time myself, Jen. But, I'm like, I love that you said that. And I have meditated for many years. So, and I actually read this, I don't know if you've heard this, that if you can take even 5 minutes of quiet, go in a room where the kids aren't screaming after you, or you can, you're not having to do something else, 5 minutes, and just breathe, you might get some insight, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so many benefits for sure. And I think that's a huge piece, like what you spoke to, because really meditation can be a moving meditation in anything. Some people, you could use washing dishes if you're being present, right? You could use taking a walk in nature. If we're using our senses, like, what do you see, smell, hear, notice, right? That's all bringing us to this present moment, which is really our point of power, right? That's where we can have our point of power and we can have our inner ears open to being able to hear our guidance and our spirit speaking to us, for sure.
Now, you said that you live every day like you're going to the spa, something to that effect, right? Is that what you said?
But I think the mindset for me, the shift I like to illustrate is that, it's no longer if I have time to meditate or do my Zumba, which is part of how I like to get into my body, or time for painting or massage or things like that. Those things often get put on the back burner. And I think a lot of my life, I didn't prioritize them. So they never happened. It was sort of like once in a blue moon. And what I've come to find, that when I prioritize that as a part of my everyday workday, and I really just decided to give myself permission that, hey, these are the things that I need to keep and sustain my energy and my balance, and to keep me feeling aligned and connected with myself and clear in what actions I want to take for the day. I realized that I'm going to shortcut my day, if that makes sense. So because I now prioritize the beginning of my day to exercise, meditation, journaling, contemplation, the next 6 hours is going to get much more productive than if I hadn't spent that first 2 hours doing that. Does that make sense? So I now see it as a part of requirement for me to really show up and be the person I'm going to be in my life and my work and my relationships. And when I did that, it really changed my life in a profound way.
And I think I think the key there too is that you're not doing it as in a job. So I I guess I'm definitely part of a world of what they call biohackers, right? Where biohacking is simply just taking control of your own best health. And sometimes it's like, okay, check this box. Did this, did my 15 minutes of meditation. Okay, check this box. Did my 20 minutes of infrared sauna. Oh God, now I got to go for my walk in nature. So it's almost like robotic, and that spiritual component is missing.
Right.
So I think this is the key. If you live your life without that real connection, you might be doing all the right things, but are you optimizing your spiritual health, right?
I love that. Yeah. One question that I think is a great thing to reflect on that I do often is, to create that spiritual connection is, what message does my soul have for me today?
Love it, Jen. Love it.
And then I just journal and write that, and I just ask, and then I listen, and it starts to cultivate that awareness of being able to recognize your own voice of your soul, for one thing. It stimulates your intuition, but it also helps keep you aligned, right? It helps to keep you connected into that space as you start your day.
Do you listen to, or do you know Lee Harris? I think his name is Lee Harris. Do you know who he is?
I do know who he is. I like him.
Yeah. And I've listened to a couple of his things, and it's not he didn't create this whole thing, but he was talking about it's called Morning Pages. And the prompt is, what does my soul tell me today?
Interesting.
Yeah. And so when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. You're speaking my language, because I have recently stopped getting up and checking my emails and my social media and all of that. And I go downstairs and I let my dog outside and I give her breakfast. And then I sit down at the table with 1 cup of coffee and I start to write. And sometimes I will write that as a prompt. What does my soul tell me today? And when you don't have all the junk in your brain, like, oh my God, this person emailed me, or, oh my God, I have to respond to this. We're not living in that responsive state all the time. And we can actually hear what our soul is saying to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes such a big difference. Like you said, that in response, it's like you're taking the CEO hat of your life and your business and you're putting it on. When you take that time to decide, how do I want to lead my day? What is my intention for today? Can I get clear? What is the best project to even start on? Because your mind might know differently than what your creative self might want to drive you for. And if you listen to your higher self, your soul, and allow that inspiration to guide you, you're going to get more done in a shorter amount of time. You'll have energy for it, motivation for it, and things just go a lot more smooth. And instead of being in response to all the different people who want a piece of you, because we're the ones that have to create that boundary for ourselves, right? Nobody else is going to do that. And so I think what you mentioned is really powerful and pretty much described what I do too. It's like having that morning space. Nope, I don't really take calls typically very early unless there's a time frame thing from another country or something. I have a morning set where I give myself that space, and I get more done in a shorter time because of it, in a more inspired way.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've named a couple of things in which you can really open up. One is meditation. Another one is your morning routine. Don't look at emails and all that stuff first thing in the morning. Just kind of ease into your morning. And I know there's probably those mamas out there who go, yeah, right. I'm busy with the kids. Listen, I personally have been there myself, but you might, for you, what might work is that 5-minute meditation, right?
For
sure. Do what works for you. And then there's people who have a lot of anxiety. And I always say, write your anxieties for the day down on a piece of paper and leave it there, right? Like, meaning there are so many different actions that we can do to address some of these issues that we've got, or blocks that we've got, to really get in touch with our life and soul's purpose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great tip, to just get it out of your body and onto the paper, because if you can get it out of our mind, and gives it somewhere for that energy to go. Yeah. Another meditation your group might like is, I call it the TLC body meditation, and it is a 5-minute meditation, and it just means talk to your body, listen to your body, and commit to your body's needs. And if we start tuning in, that again starts to bring that alignment between your spiritual self and your human self and your body, right? We have to have that relationship in sync for things to really flow in our life in an easier way, in a more aligned way. And so when you tune into your body, like what you just said, it's like, well, you can even go a step further. Well, where is that anxiety stemming from in my body? Where is it? What is it actually trying to tell me? What am I have I not listened to? Because by the time something manifests into a physical form like that, is something we've likely ignored the whisper on to a degree, or not addressed in some way. And so when we talk to our body and ask very specifically, my intention is to feel more peace and release the anxiety, and start with that. Where is the anxiety, and what can I do to bring it into alignment, and listen and then act on it, which might be simply take a 5-minute walk in nature. It might be a simple action step, right? And you'll feel better.
And then, you know what, maybe you have some insight into this, is a lot of people, especially nowadays, are very triggered. And I always say, if you're triggered, there's something inside of you that you need to address. It's not the triggerer. I'm going to call him or her the triggerer, the person, or the triggy. You're the triggy, but you get what I'm saying, Jen. Like, if you are triggered, I used to get triggered way more than I do now. Now, I say triggered, which is separate from sensitivity, because I am still an extremely sensitive person, which I know we're going to get into. But the whole triggering thing, I've really released a lot of that, because I realize that's just a reflection of something I need to work on. And people don't realize this. What are your thoughts on that, Jen?
Oh, 100%. That's actually what we do in my courses a lot, as as I teach people to develop their spiritual gifts. Part of what we're doing is they practice reading with each other, because we do that. We attract the person that has the same core wounding, and it's much easier sometimes to see in somebody else than ourselves. But the point that you just mentioned is, if you're triggered, or you have a strong emotional charge around, or judgment, or black and white thinking, there's always opportunity to transform something within us, right?
Yes.
Personal power back and going, okay, so this may or may not be okay. Like, in terms of, it doesn't mean that if you have somebody that's not respecting you, you just allow that to happen. No, you address the fact of a boundary or whatever. But then you also go, but what is it within me I'm actually feeling? Like, what is this within me that's even it's part of this dynamic that I'm being called to shift? And when we take our power back, our personal responsibility is our point of power, essentially. And so when we really dig a little deeper into questioning, what is it that I was actually feeling, and really walk the situation back outside of the person who did this, or the government did that, or whatever's happening, but we take the power back into our own hands and say, okay, well, what am I actually feeling about that? And take it outside of the situation to that feeling. You'll find that exactly what you said is, it's just pointing the finger back at something that's already been there. And it's really come into your circle as actually an opportunity of healing. So now we can thank the person. If we can get there, that's great, right?
Yes, or a lesson. So
Right.
An opportunity of healing, or some sort of a lesson.
Yeah, part of that
Right?
dynamic that we're a part of, that we're being called to shift out of, for sure.
Yeah. And anyway, I find all of this internal work extremely rewarding. And I do my best to look within, because I know that it's going to do me good in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
because it'll just come back around in a different way, from a different person, in a different, you can't hide from your vibration. Your energy, it's your energy. You can move, you can change jobs, but you'll find that you'll start repeating those patterns with different people in different ways, until you learn what you're being called to learn, what your soul wanted to evolve through.
yeah, I mean, I've had past life read, and some people believe in it, some people don't, and that's fine, whatever you choose to believe in. But when that was done for me, I really was blown away, because I got some answers that made sense to me, and I was like, oh yeah, now I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, not everybody believes in that, and that's fine. But maybe you can go into a couple of different ways in which someone like yourself can help people, I guess, declutter. And because I do feel that when we declutter, we have more clarity as to where our life's purpose and our life's and our soul's purpose actually is.
Yes. So the question would be how to declutter or how to get to their soul's purpose, or
When they work with you,
Mhm.
we know about the meditation, we know about the journaling, we know about that, but what else do you do to really help somebody achieve that whole clarity on what their life's purpose is?
Right. It's kind of my approach is multifaceted. I don't do one-on-one work right now. I work in group programs, and partly a large part of what you'd mentioned, the mirroring, seeing your wounds and patterns in other people is often easier than in yourself. So I find the group setting to be very powerful. One part of it is that you're about your own energy. You're learning how to recognize, and there is meditation practice that I teach to really connect and clear out, and for sensitive people who might have absorbed other people's energy or emotions and think it's their own. So the first step is creating that connection with your soul, and so I teach a process around that. It's more of a daily habit, a practice that you can incorporate with your own routine. And then we start to, do some inner healing work. So part of that is recognizing your triggers, looking at yourself. So there's definitely a deep level of inner reflection that we do look at, as well as I run healing and healing for people. So we're kind of activating higher frequency energy, and we're clearing out the lower patterns and fears that we may have passed down from our ancestors and things like this in our life, in society, other lifetimes. And then I teach them how to really cultivate a process to really learn how to read their own energy, right? I teach people how to read their own, to really communicate with their soul and really develop their intuition so that they can be their own guide, right? You know what's best for you. Your higher self always knows the answer. Your higher self and soul came in with a highest plan for this lifetime, right? And sometimes in that communication between your higher self and your soul and your human self, that is your intuition. And so learning to develop your intuition and read the energy through processes of tracking back to, well, what's driving this pattern? Why is it that I keep dating the same type of person who is emotionally unavailable? Why is it that this is happening, right? It teaches you how to really read those core patterns within yourself so that you can actually change them. And really the final step of that is you do have to take new action, right? Again, we have to become aware of things, and we have to do the inner healing work. And then we have to seal the deal really by taking new action, by creating a new habit around that might be different than we had been doing before. And as we start to do that one at a time, and part of the power is that they read and they practice how to do these readings that they're teaching themselves with each other. And you'll always attract the partner that has that same wounding. And it's so much easier when you're emotionally not attached to the outcome of something to be able to read that pattern in somebody else. And through that process, you can actually heal yourself as well. And so that's a really powerful it's a 4-prong approach really in the program that we do. It's a 14-week program, and through that process, they're really learning how to be their own psychic, their own healer, their own reader, their own ability to really tap into asking their soul, what is the next step for me? What is it what gifts am I here to bring? You're actually cultivating that confidence and trust in yourself to be able to create the life and the business that you dream of. Right? To know that it's possible, because you don't have to figure it out with your mind. You don't have to know the how. You just have to be able to ask, drop in, receive the next steps through your intuition, and take action on them one step at a time. And in 6 months' time of doing something like that, you'll be in a completely different space, right? You'll be in a completely different place that'll be much more aligned and fulfilled with who you are and who you came to be.
Okay. I mean, we'll get into intuition, but here's a question for you. Is a highly sensitive person a highly triggered person?
Without tools. Without tools, I would say without spiritual awareness or tools, they could be. I'd say there's always the gift and the shadow of everything. Right?
Oh, yeah. Dark and light. I believe in that.
with when we're overwhelmed with our sensitivities, because I do work with mostly highly sensitive and empathic people who and as myself did not know that I was. And so as a result, I was using, for me, it was numbing, right? Because most of the time, a lot of times there's certain patterns or even addictions sometimes, whether that's shopping or workaholic or numbing, kind of avoiding the slowdown, basically because of that overstimulation that creates overwhelm for a lot of people. And so that's the first step of I do is my style of meditation tools actually is also teaching them the awareness of their energetic boundaries versus somebody else's energy, so that they're not confusing other people's emotions and desires for their own, which is what highly sensitive and empathic people often do. And yes, they can be triggered if they're overstimulated because they're feeling the world at like 25% higher volume than other people. And they've likely been shamed. They might have even been told you're too sensitive or quit being a crybaby, or, they might have even been shamed in some ways for their sensitivities growing up. But the reality is it really is a gift. So without tools, you might be overwhelmed, anxious, numbing, frozen, or just burnt out.
Reactive.
Yeah, or even in cycles of codependency, like overgiving, giving to your detriment, like avoiding confrontation, so not speaking your truth, like all these patterns like stem off of high sensitivity without tools. And then once you learn how to manage your sensitivities, I see it as your greatest gift, because really you're already so tapped into your soul. The frequency of that connection of your ability to recognize the unseen world, which is essentially what's happening. For highly sensitive people, they're often stimulated by the unseen emotions of others as their own, kind of a thing. When they start to filter that out, recognize what's theirs, and hold their sovereign energy, they have their intuition on tap. That connection to their soul is actually already there. Often they just need to learn how to actually ground that energy into their body, clear out everybody else's feedback that they've absorbed from the world, from the collective, so that they can anchor into their own information. And when you do that, and especially with some intention and some tools, you'll find that your intuition is already very much active for you. It's just then about trusting it and utilizing it and cultivating it so that it can guide you in your day-to-day life.
I have done a lot of work. I've even done a show on intuition. And intuition is one of the most complex facets, I believe, of spirituality, because I don't know, like, I know I do all of those things, but still I will go, oh, I don't know, but she's nice, and whatever. But my intuition, how do you know? How do you know? And then something happens, and then the true colors are seen, and then you're like, oh, damn, I should have listened to myself. So that's happened to me numerous times. And I still don't know how to listen. And it's not, you hear from other people, oh, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a hell no. You hear those things, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you need a little bit of contemplation, and intuition is not necessarily the first thing that comes to your mind. So give us some tips, Jen, because it's very hard to know.
I think the biggest thing, well, just to kind of, in what you even shared to me, you just taught yourself something too, right? So in hindsight, if we don't listen, we actually now a little bit more know and recognize what our intuition sounds like and feels like. So that's part of it, is in the contrast of recognizing whether you followed through or you realize that you didn't follow through, you got to know how your intuition speaks to you. We all have intuition. Our intuition is just the translation of information between your higher self and your physical human body self, your personality, right? Your human beingness and your spiritual self. And then that includes your angels and guides and things like that as well. But so you have to first quiet, right? And then you have to discern the trust. So sometimes it's a matter of cleaning up times in your life where you didn't trust yourself, right? So I think a lot of times people do get their intuition, but they don't trust it enough to take action. And so you're getting your intuition, but you're not necessarily trusting. So sometimes it's about healing other times in our life. Maybe you made a decision, not you, but just the viewers, right? Yeah. Maybe you've had a decision in your life where you thought for sure this person was the person for you, and then you were wrong. And now you don't trust yourself. So you're playing back previous things in your life that quote unquote didn't work out right, that says, oh, I can't trust myself. And so part of it is, one of the largest things, honestly, is cleaning up the distrust of self, where you've maybe trusted somebody who betrayed you or lied to you. And it tells that feedback tells me, oh, I can't be trusted because I trusted the wrong person. Right. And so these cleaning up sometimes past relationships and past things that we are holding ourselves accountable for not doing correctly in some way is a huge piece of it. And then also I teach tools and practices. I mean, there's definitely, I teach the energetics of how to read energy. And part of that is being centered, like your third eye, that is your spiritual center, that is spiritual truth and neutrality. So when you're in your intuition, your true intuition, it's not going to be judging. It's not going to be, your ego has a bit more of emotional charge to it, or a judgment, or a fear, or fear driving it, right? Where your intuition is, and there isn't judgment on it. It's a place of spiritual truth and neutrality. And so if you're not feeling neutral, and you're coming from a place of fear, or you're coming from a place of rationalization, then you know that you're coming from your mind more than your intuition. And so there's just a level of discernment that happens through practicing. The other thing I would say is that you want to start asking. So you know how I mentioned in the beginning, in your morning routine, this message of your soul's one way to cultivate this recognition.
Yeah.
But the other thing is just asking your higher self, and if you want to, your angels and guides, if you wanted, to give you loud, clear signs to help you align with your higher path today. And when you do that, you're initiating the universe to really give you feedback through your intuition. You're going to pick up on these synchronicities. So you can get them through your sight, through hearing, through thinking, through your feeling, right? Our intuition comes to us in different ways. And so as you start to invite signs that are loud, that you can understand, and you start to recognize them and start to take action on them, you'll start to cultivate that trust as well. So recognizing, how do you receive signs? Is it visual? Or is it auditorial? Are you hearing musical, like a music in a song, or a phrase in a song at just the right time that illuminates a message for a validation for you, right? So just recognizing how are you receiving your signs, and start to practice receiving them more in that way by asking and recognizing. And when you set your intention at the beginning of the day and get grounded and present before you start the day, you're much more apt to be present enough to be aware of them that are happening all the time. So your intuition responds through open-ended questions.
Okay. I hear this a lot. I see this a lot. It's like a really, really, and I'm not saying that you're just jumping on a trend at all, Jen. That's not what I'm saying. But I do feel a lot of people is this whole angel guides, spirit guides, like, explain that. Because a lot of people go, yeah, that's BS. Like, how do you know? Who are these mysterious guides? Can we really get in touch with them? You know what I'm saying? Like, explain that a little bit.
Well, I think it has to be something that you experiment with. Again, it's a personal choice. So if it's not something somebody's comfortable with, you don't have to, but you might just see how you feel by inviting and asking and just recognizing whether it's a loved one. You can always work with, maybe you have a loved one that you want to connect with, or I believe we all have angels and guides that are there. We have spiritual support on the other side, just like we have human support, we have spiritual support. And so I think the best thing for people, if they're open or interested, is to just, but that we do have free will of choice as human beings, because we're here to evolve and learn lessons. So if the angels and guides just intervened on our behalf without our awareness, we would just think we were lucky and we wouldn't learn anything. And so there is an element
of coincidence, right?
So there's an element of like a conscious decision and awareness of the invitation. And so if you want to start practicing with that, just ask one of your angels and guides to give you some signs that you can see. And when you it's a personal relationship, it's a personal relationship that you develop and that you have to invite in. And I think that you'll recognize it pretty quickly, and you'll probably come to you in pretty spontaneous and fun ways. I find the spirit team, what I love about working with my spirit guides, one thing that I will say is I don't abdicate my decisions or responsibility over to my guides. Sometimes I think people can be disempowered. Well, what does my spirit guide want me to do? We don't want to do that, right? We want to know that we are all sovereign beings. And sometimes it's nice to have some help, right? Why not? It's like in the real world, we need some support. You have your spiritual support. What I find with my angels and guides, because I've developed the awareness of their energy, right? Just like we do recognize the other, things in our physical world, you'll start to discern that they can snap me out of a stupor. So what I love to work with my angels and guides for is in the beginning of the day, if I say, hey, give me loud, clear signs I can easily understand to align with my higher path or with a certain project, if it's more specific, like if it's for business or something like that, and then pay attention to it, I find that when I go unconscious into my mind and get into my head, like driving down the street, I might just all of a sudden be in traffic. Now I'm in my head. Now I'm complaining in my head and I'm spinning a conversation. That's not helping me get towards what I want. That's an unconscious moment, right? We have over 80,000 thoughts a day. So not all of them are conscious. Even if we're conscious people, they're not, right? And so when I go unconscious, my angels and guides can kind of basically get my attention to snap me back into, hey, hand over the worry and get back aligned. You're not acting, you're not in aligned, you're in your head. Hand that over and get back centered and get grounded, get present. And so throughout my day, the more that I have the team kind of like helping me recognize when I've lost my own grounded alignment to myself, to help me find that again. And then I'm manifesting and creating more in the flow of life, right? I'm more able to notice the synchronicities around me and take actions that will go a long way. And so that's how I love to work with my guides, is to help me remember that connection when I forgot.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there. When you get out of your head, and there are many ways you can do that, such as some of the things that we already talked about, like journaling first thing in the morning, doing almost like a journaling dump, like everything that is just coming out without even a lot of thought down to paper. Well, that's often these, I don't know, I would say it comes from the subconscious when you're not really thinking about it too hard, right? So there's that, but then there's something to be said about meditation that puts you in theta mode. And a lot of healing and clearing happens in theta mode. And I know this as somebody who has been meditating for over 5 years. And more recently, I've started using a tool that actually puts me in that mode. So it's almost like a shortcut. Sometimes when you have monkey brain or reptilian brain, where you're just kind of going, and it's hard for you to get into that meditative state. I use a tool for that. And a lot of things happen in that state. And, seeing deep, deep purple is a sign of your third eye opening, right? And I'm a big believer that a lot of creativity comes from that space because you're not in your head. So whether you believe in your angels or you don't believe in your angels, or you believe that a past loved one is kind of guiding you, I personally do not believe in coincidence.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that's, I think, what we're shifting to as a society, and how you mentioned, I think a lot of people are speaking more to the intuition, is because that's something that's been repressed for a long, long time and hasn't been given any attention really or information on for a lot of us. It's not like we were raised in school teaching us how to listen to our feelings and intuition. That would be great, but that's not what's happened. And so we're changing that. And I think that is really what we're waking up to. We're shifting the way that we are doing life and business, really, especially, I don't know, as women, I think that we kind of had to fit ourselves into the more masculine mold of how to do a business, which isn't really how we're meant to operate, and I think as a whole, we're learning how to receive, inspiration. This is how I create all of my program downloads. I get a download of information through my morning routine. All of a sudden, a whole idea comes in, and the creativity. And so that inspirations are divine, our feminine aspect. We all have male, female energy, but like the feminine aspect is where our intuition and creativity comes from. And then through that, we want our actions to be led from our inspiration, from our intuition. And when we take action from that space, we're going to find ourselves aligned with our purpose. And we're going to find ourselves aligned and, embodied and expressing that higher truth of who we are in all areas, which brings fulfillment, happiness, joy, abundance, ideas. And we're taking action from that space, as opposed to forced action and, creativity separately or even at all, your mind isn't driving the show, your intuition is guiding the actions. And that's a big shift. That's a big shift. And I think when you make that shift, you'll find that life becomes pretty miraculous and a lot of fun. And you can really create such change in your life in such a short amount of time when you start to lead from that more expanded truth of who you are.
Yeah, I like the term being in the flow of your own life. You know when, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you're a mom or, if you're a wife or whatever, and you're not in the flow of your own life, you can feel it, people. It's not happening. Like, I know if anybody here listening has had young children, it's very hard to be in the flow of your own life. It's hard to be in the flow in your marriage, even. But if you I wish I knew this when I was like 40, Jen, or even 30, in my 30s. I think my son, I was 31 when my son was born. And I was so out of the flow of my own life. And if I had those tools back then, I would be a very different person now. Much more, like, I'd say I'm pretty evolved, but much more evolved than I am now. You get what I'm saying? So, inspirational living. Let's kind of start to tie this up. What does inspirational living mean to you?
It's really allowing your higher self, your soul, to be guiding your actions and your relationships. I often say that in most simplistic terms, your purpose, your life purpose or soul's purpose, same thing, is really the embodiment. So aligning with your higher self, embodying your higher self, and expressing that through your life and through your business. And when we do that, like you said, you feel good. You feel the dissonance of the misalignments. You see that things aren't going well. But when we are aligned with our soul and we're allowing our soul to be expressed and our truth to be expressed without worrying about pleasing other people or getting it wrong or what people will think, that's all that's noise. And when we can set that down and just allow ourselves to be authentically expressed in these different ways or areas, you feel excited, right? You have motivation, you have energy, you feel joy, right? Everything good is going to come from that state of alignment. So to me, inspirational living is aligning with your soul and allowing your soul and your intuition to really be that guidepost for you in terms of what it is you create in the day-to-day. And if you do that, you'll turn around and you'll have an inspired life and an inspired business. That you may not have understood, how you could create it, but when you live it day by day, you'll look back and just all of a sudden you'll be living it, right? You'll be living it.
Yeah. And you teach this.
Yes, this is what I teach. I teach people how to really align with their spiritual selves, how to clear out the noise of everybody else, the shoulds, the mental chatter, the beliefs that are carried down that are in conflict with our soul, right? How to really clear through those things so that you can recognize your spirit, so that you can develop trust in yourself and trust in the process. Because oftentimes when we start living an inspired life, you'll find that your miracles are always on the other side of some kind of fear, right? So we have to really be good at feeling the fear or getting out of our comfort zone, being able to take action through our fears and through our comfort zone in order to really live that highest inspired life. Because most of the time it's not logical, right? And our intuition and inspiration is the fast track to that life, but we have to be willing to have the courage to go after it and be willing to do things outside of the norm that maybe your family or friends wouldn't understand why you would make that decision, but you know in your heart and gut that it's the right thing for you. And so you have built that trust in yourself to go ahead and take the action anyways, right?
You know how many people said to me when I went back to college at 46, and they said, "Why are you doing that? Like, that's crazy. Like, why would you put yourself through going to school? Your husband does well. Like, what are you doing?" Like, I've actually heard those words. Now, I'm going to be 53, so this is a long time ago now when I was 46, but still, most people, actually, I've heard of a lot of people, specifically women, who do go back to school because they're inspired to do something else when they're in their 40s. And I highly recommend you do tune out all the naysayers, and you do this because now I get to do something that I am excited about every single morning, Jen. Every day, just like you, I almost get up out of bed because I'm excited on what the day is going to bring. And I really wish that for everybody.
Yes, that's so awesome, right? And then just being able to know that the work that you're doing and sharing is impacting others in a positive way. And as you share with share with your audience the inspiration and the guests that you're sharing and all of the work that you do, it creates a ripple effect, far and wide beyond even the people that you're listening to, because that one shift for them listening to an episode might have created an epiphany, and then it's going to affect happily their whole household, right? And so that's where it starts to create this ripple effect of healing in the world for everyone, which there's nothing better than that feeling. I think when you wake up and you see that, oh, thank you, that changed my life, or what you said really gave me an epiphany, and then how that starts to actually unfold in their whole world of people, right? That starts to influence everybody. And so I think it's so powerful. When we give ourselves permission to do that, we also give other people permission to go for their dreams. And I think, sharing stories is such a powerful way to do that, to let people know that you're not alone. You don't have to have it all figured out. Everything is possible, for you. You deserve to be happy, and all of these things are important things to consider that sometimes we haven't slowed down enough to really give it attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty grateful. But let's wrap things up, and you can tell me, where can people find you? Where can they get in touch with you? Maybe take one of your courses. What's the best way, Jen?
Let's see. Well, my website is soulsuccessunleashed.com. I do have a free 4-day masterclass series. So for those people that are resonating with this idea of wanting to get in touch with their intuition, perhaps learn some tools and techniques and styles to help them not feel overwhelmed with their sensitivity and cultivate their gifts, I do have a free 4-day masterclass series that could easily be a paid for workshop. I think there's about 6 hours of content training in there. So very much tools that you can apply and have results right away. So I think that's a powerful place to start. And Facebook is where I'm most active. I have a Facebook group of close to 20,000 people that are all going through different levels of spiritual awakening, aligning with purpose. And what's great about that is being in community with people that you can share these things with, right? Because most of the time people in your life are like, what? That sounds a little crazy. You heard this, or your grandparents, having a place to share as things are coming, happening for you, can be really, really validating and empowering as well. So I'd love to invite people there as well. That's called Soul Inspired Leaders Mastermind. Or no, Soul Inspired Leaders Collective, sorry.
And that one's on Facebook, right?
That's where I'm the most active on social media, although you can find me on the other channels as well.
All right. That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Jen. It was so amazing to meet you.
It was a lot of fun. I love chatting with you too. We have a lot of similarities in terms of our thinking. So thank you so much for what you're bringing to the world as well. It's really, really powerful.
Thank you, Jen.
All right.
Okay. So I pressed stop. I think that was really good. So, as you can see, I don't necessarily follow exactly everything that I write down.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think it works good that way. It gives me an idea of knowing the direction